Title of tonight's talk is Dharma Gossip. And the reason I am using that, I thought about different ways of titling this so I can cover this particular topic. And I encourage you to ask questions about it because it might not be all that clear. One of the things the Dharma means truth or the law, and in Buddhism there's the Buddha Dharma, or the truth that the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago, which is that everything is dependently arisen. There's no solid individual self anywhere. There's something going on, but it's not a solid thing. Seems like it. And so by having this topic, basically what I'm endeavoring to point out here is the way we may tend to over talk a particular topic, how we're doing, how our mind is working, what we think about, say, this practice or other people who are teachers or other students, and so on. We tend to kind of rattle on about things and fill up the space with our commentary. Not so helpful. It's basically just gossip. Talking about this person, talking about this, maybe complaining, maybe it could be the opposite of complaining. And so I'm just saying that it's not particularly helpful to our practice to do that. And we have several hours a week, I think 10 hours a week of book study, where we sit around the little table here and also talk to people at a distance who call in on our conference line. People in different ways. I think we just had a new caller from Cleveland, Ohio, just joined us, and with that kind of a situation, we're studying the Dharma. We're studying some aspect of the teachings. I think today we studied Dogen Zenji's, the 13th century founder of Sokuzan, of this particular lineage. And so the idea there is we're talking about the Dharma, but we're actually discussing that material together as what's called Sangha. In Buddhism, there's something called the three jewels. There's the Buddha, which this carving represents. This is not the Buddha, by the way. This is a carving. And so, and then the Dharma, or the truth that the Buddha taught, which could be seen as what I'm saying. And it could be seen as what the Buddha said, what Dogen said in the 13th century, what any teacher says down through the years who was a Dharma teacher. And then some of these teachings are extremely helpful and clear, and some of them are maybe not so helpful, and some kind of go in and out of fashion a little bit as time goes on. So in that situation, you actually are talking about the Dharma with other people, but you're actually discussing the material. You're not necessarily interpreting the material for other people. You may be spending a lot of time just listening. So, and this same idea of gossiping spreads out to situations where as a practitioner, as a student of Buddhism, or just a student of meditation, whether you consider yourself a Buddhist or not is not so important. But there, it's not like I'm saying you shouldn't say anything to anybody or have that is some kind of a secret. It's just that what we tend to do is, if we're doing something like meditation practice and we're having any kind of difficulty with it, we begin to chatter about it. And sometimes it's been my experience, having taught meditation since I was trained in 1978, I've met a lot of people face to face in what we call the Hojo. It's also an interview room, where you talk to someone about their meditation practice. And that's the best place to do it, to talk about your practice with the person who is your teacher, or the person that you are, you may not have a commitment to them as a teacher, but they're functioning that way, at least for a while. So in that case, that's the place you want to talk about it. That's the place you want to spill the beans. If you're going to spill the beans at all, if you're going to, they still say spill the beans. That's still a phrase, right? Okay. I know I'm getting really old, so I don't want to talk about the 1950s too much. So anytime you begin to talk about yourself, it's good if you're in front of a person who's going to do what? Who has had so much training and that their understanding is such that they aren't going to get in the way of your own awakening. They're not going to get in the way of your own sanity. They're not going to project their ideas and so on onto you, and they will give you the benefit of the doubt no matter what you say to them. I've actually, like I said, I've talked to a lot of people. I've sat in the interview room with people who have murdered people. Not easy. Not easy. But that's not something you would chat with someone about anyway. But I'm just saying that's an area where you could, where, you know, if you're going to help somebody or if you're going to get help from somebody, it's good to tell someone about it or share with someone that you really trust and that there's a possibility that they could fundamentally help you. It's not easy. Anyone who works in a situation where you're dealing with people who are coming for help in some way, whether it's a situation like AFR, whether you have counselors and so on, or a situation like with Senchu. Senchu is a social worker, talks to people in private about their issues, their problems, and so on. So I guess what I'm saying is take your comments, your voice seriously. Be serious about it. And this doesn't mean shutting down on what's arising. There might be all kinds of gossip arising. Just don't hook up your vocal cords. I mean, you can have thoughts come and then go. And you'll notice if you practice that, you know, do it, say, if you're at Starbucks or Caribou, what other places are there? Big B's. If you're someplace with you're with your homies or whatever, and you're hanging out and you're hearing conversations about others and whatever that may be, keep it to a minimum. Try it. Do it for an hour where you talk with when you're talking with someone, you enact the most important part of communication, which is what? Listening. Correct. Listening. If you listen, that's communication. Because anytime anyone is talking, they need someone to hear them. So something you could do for everyone, your friends, your mom, your dad, listen. And how do we listen? With our whole body, with our whole mind, with all of our sense fields. If you are not aware of gravity, if you're ignoring gravity, if you're ignoring how your body feels, if you're ignoring sounds, if you're ignoring anything, then you're only getting part of the story. And if you're ignoring the body language of the person in front of you, which of course body language has an interesting thing about body language, it's just impossible to interpret. Don't interpret it, but don't take your eyes off of it. As soon as you start interpreting anything you look at, you immediately leave it for your idea about it. It's called an opinion. Don't do it. You can exist just fine without opinions. I do it all the time. You should ask questions about that. It's possible to live in Buddhism. It's called the middle way, and it sounds like, what's that? You know, undecided. Not quite. It looks like that to ego. Ego looks at the middle way and thinks, wait, you know, you got to have an opinion. You got to decide things. You got to know this from that. How are you gonna identify good from evil? How are you gonna know this from that? You don't need to. You don't need to have that information. And if you do need to have that information will be forthcoming. Questions at this point? Lisa.
How do you not have opinions but still like ice cream?
Is that a trick question? That's a trick question.
That seems like.
Who told you I liked ice cream?
Seems like liking ice cream is an opinion.
Is it? I don't think it enters the area of conceptual. I mean, you can do it in the conceptual mind, but basically its foundation is just in sense of taste. Just the flavor of it is, but you don't have to necessarily jump into a story about it. It's actually easier to not eat ice cream or not overeat it or whatever if you don't think about it. I'm not saying you can stay away. No guarantees. It's Michael.
You mentioned to make a story about it. Could you go deeper into what you mean by making a story about it? There's the ice cream.
Yeah.
You like it. So when does it become a story?
As soon as you start talking to yourself about you should have some, ice cream is a health food. I haven't had ice cream for very long. I deserve some. It's like anything. I mean, you can do it with,
Sex.
well, you can't do it with that. I tried. It didn't work. You can actually do it with anything. I mean, anything that you're drawn, anything you're passionate about, sure, then you can add passion on top of it. The first passion is fine. The first passion is actually without concepts, even sex. But it's always tied into gravity, things that are around you, how things look, and you function in a graceful and balanced way with your world, with the people in your world. And there's and that sense of clawing at things to get them, or shoving at things to get rid of them, and shutting down on things that you don't have control over. Those things start to back off. Those are the three poisons in Buddhism. I want it, I don't want it. What problem? I want it, I don't want it. What? Or the distraction. You were looking at something. Have all of you been looking at someone and you think they're looking at you and you think they're listening to you, and then they just change the subject, and you kind of feel like, oh, they don't want to talk about that anymore. They don't like me. This is usually the first thing that comes up. Or they hate me. Sheldon.
You said don't have opinions.
What did I say?
Don't have opinions.
Did I say don't have opinions?
Did you say that?
I don't know. Did I?
You said we don't need opinions.
Oh, that's different.
Okay.
You don't
And
need
then
You don't need a Mercedes, but if you can get one, get one.
then you said I do it all the time.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
I see that I have opinions and I don't do anything with them. I don't believe them. I don't disbelieve them. I don't do anything with them. It's not easy, but it can be done. It's basically called no self, and the skandhas, no self, and form, feeling, perception, concept, consciousness, no self. It doesn't mean there isn't something there. There is definitely something there, and it's probably more intense and more spontaneous, more creative, more outrageous, more adventurous, more courageous, and full of fear. All of that, all at once. No differentiation. Since you.
Without a solid self, does action still come out of opinions?
It can, but it's not a direct, there's not like a direct link to it. It's not, the opinion doesn't come out of the opinion. The opinion hasn't been gotten rid of. You just don't necessarily believe it. But also the opinion can run right alongside what you're doing. It's just that you don't need the opinion to do that. If it's like if you see someone that's in trouble and you, depending on what it would be, you say, can I help you? And they say, yes, do this, do this. You don't necessarily operate in opinions. They might be off to the side a little bit, and they may run coincidentally or concurrently with what's happening, but you don't really need them to function. They may be there, they may not. Yes?
Do we need to not express our opinions?
Pardon me?
Do we need to not express our opinions?
I think it's a good idea to set them aside and examine them before you start using that to strategize your life. I think it's a good idea to look at everything that you see that is an opinion, and you'll notice that it's some kind of belief that something is true, and you have no proof. If you have proof, then it'd be a fact. Everyone would believe it, other than really, really insane people, like the people who are denying climate change. You know, you have a bunch of scientists telling you it's happening, and then there are people who are denying it. So just your very question, the way you ask that question, I would say that for you, I would say you need to watch the opinions really closely. Keep expressing them, but just see what your motivation is for even having an opinion about something. You follow me?
Mhm.
Are you a meditator?
Yes,
Are you? How long have you meditated?
about 3 months.
Okay. Where did you start?
Doing yoga at my house.
Okay. So you're still doing yoga?
Mhm.
Do you do sitting meditation, sitting looking at a wall?
Yes.
Okay. The way you were taught by one of these people here?
No, this is my first time here.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Do you go to the holistic track?
No, not right now. I actually have DVDs,
Oh.
like guided, that I use.
Okay, good. So, eyes open meditation?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
good.
some are open, some are closed.
Yeah, okay. Keep going.
Thank you.
Good question. Yes,
Question from Steve in Cleveland.
Stephen.
He asks, how do we communicate without opinions?
We're not talking about getting rid of opinions. We're not talking about throwing them away, chopping them up in pieces and putting in the disposal unit. We're saying just know that you have opinions and see that you see how you use opinions and see the way in which they may support you or not, and you can they'll start to fall away. And as we talked about just earlier, that communication is very important, might be the most important part of communication, or is listening. Actually listening, really listening not only to what the person is saying, but listening, watching their body language, watching how if they put periods on what they say by going like this or changing their body position. Not easy to decipher in terms of the general understanding of knowledge, but in terms of the understanding of intuition, it's very powerful. Someone can come in the room and they don't have to say anything, and you know what their mood is. We do it all the time. We read people's body language constantly without really thinking about it or having a particular opinion. So to Steve, I would say observe the way the opinion interacts and see whether you actually need to grasp at an opinion as something as being true and its opposite being false. And don't go there. Picking and choosing, as it says in I don't know which sutra is it? Sin Sin Ming, the faith and heart mind of Sokuzan is picking and choosing is a disease of the mind. You don't need to do that. Isn't that good news? I think that's really good news. You don't need to do that. That includes ice cream. You know, I mean, you don't need to have pistachio ice cream. You just have vanilla. It'd be all right, wouldn't it? Shoka.
How is eye contact helpful in communication?
Because looking at someone in the eyes cuts down on your conceptualization. Because when you look in someone's eyes, you're seeing much deeper into them than just eyeballs. Yeah, that's why they say the saying is what the eyes are the windows of the mind of the soul, and they are. Look at someone's eyes. Sit down sometime. Have someone sit in front of you and just look in their eyes. You just did that recently.
Well, sometimes it seems like there's a discomfort that arises with that.
Yeah.
What is the discomfort?
The discomfort is what you're doing is it's like you've disconnected from your conceptual mind, and you're actually looking at a living being who is aware of you, and awareness becomes primary. That's why it's so powerful. In the Scientology organization, which I do not endorse, by the way, the works of L. Ron Hubbard, But one of the things they picked up, which they, stole from lots of different Eastern religions, please don't sue me, is the idea of sitting and looking at someone for long periods of time. It's quite therapeutic from the point of view of helping you relax your grip on your issues and problems. Yes.
What does it mean to have a sane conversation?
Well, sane, in other words, not crazy. So it helps if you have two sane people. So, but a person who understands their own insanity, you know that you're kind of crazy. That's not exactly crazy. The craziness is someone who insists that they're sane, and insists that they're not psychotic or not schizophrenic or not whatever word you want to attach to it. But someone who is sane is someone who has an awareness of their self-centeredness, or the awareness of their tendency to grasp at opinions, which might be a way that maybe that would be helpful to Steve in Cleveland. Is it's not so much the opinion, it's the clinging or hanging on to the opinion that seems to create the problem. Because as soon as you do that, as soon as you grasp at it, your senses, your understanding, or your perception of what is happening goes like this, and you see your preconceptions about it or your opinion. Opinion looks just like the palm of your hand over your eyes. All investigation ceases. Think about it. If you think something is true, you're not going to look any further. It's true. So it's like the earth is flat. Baboons have wings. That's a hard one for me. I didn't know they had wings. I guess they do. Sheldon.
Is insisting you're right about things the same as insisting that you're sane?
Well, to insist that you're sane is insane, isn't it? Or am I wrong? Is that your opinion?
Yeah.
More? Yes.
From Shane out in California.
Shane in San Clemente.
He has a statement and then a question and then a statement.
Oh no, bookends. Go ahead.
We're taught to hold our vocal cords. Should we allow others to go on and on about their problems? Should we encourage others not to vocalize?
No.
It seems like a lot of people wouldn't understand that you're trying to help.
Don't try to help. Don't help anybody unless you have permission. Don't interfere with anybody else's life, with their karma. Allow people to fail. A person's life lesson might be about falling flat on their face. You don't want to get in the way of that. That's like coming and saying, I'm stopping you right at the 11th grade. You're not going any further. I'm going to help you. How kind of you to help me with my karma. You haven't even worked out your own damn karma, and here you are trying to meddle with somebody else's because you don't really want to look at your own. Work on yourself. Keep your own counsel. Dharma gossip. Don't do it. Don't go into places you aren't invited, please. And if you are invited, make sure that that's really an invitation, and make sure that your motivation for going is about really wanting to help them rather than really wanting to appear as someone who helps. Quite often we have people who want to look like helpers, but when it comes right down to it, they don't really want to, yes. Jason.
Can this gossip interfere with our awareness or our seeing of what we need to see?
Good point. And that's, Jason's actually by that question is reminding me of an aspect of this that I didn't emphasize, is that by having a lot of chatter about, even if it's a very powerful topic, we're talking about the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 12 links in the chain of existence, or passion, aggression, ignorance, the three poisons, or whatever it may be, to be sincere about that and actually go in and try to study that material, and don't take another person's insight away from them by explaining things to them. And if they ask you, if they say, well, what do you think? I can understand passion. I can understand aggression, but I'm not quite clear on ignorance, how that works. How does that work? Then you actually are put in a place where you could say a few things about it the way it's looked to you. But don't volunteer it, and don't convert anybody to meditation. Don't tell anybody to meditate. Don't teach Buddhism. Don't teach anything unless you are asked, unless you're given permission, or unless you're me, which I can do anything I want. Not really. Mark,
Do you have a self?
do I have a self? I have a whole bunch of them.
What does that mean?
They're all over the place, all you guys. Functioning with others. It's just functioning with others, helping others. Someone needs your help, or you talk to someone and you feel like you can connect with them, then you help them if you have their permission. If you don't, then stay out. But a self, I know what you're asking about. Do I have like an ego?
Yeah.
Yeah. But here's the difference. Is I know it's not real, so I don't have to get rid of mine. But if you think your ego is real, you're going to try to be egoless, and this is the height of self-centeredness, to try to be egoless, because you're trying to get away. You're trying to get rid of an actor. And you don't have to get rid of an actor. You just see that it's a play. And then the ego becomes disempowered from the point of view of running your life. And you start living your life out of your awareness and out of your insight and out of your Buddha nature, which takes the kind of courage that takes is not available to ego. Because if ego tries to puff up like that, then they start to run for president. I'm really important. And so, but the way the structure of our country these days probably wouldn't allow anybody to come along who was sane or had a modicum of sanity, like some of the people that are running. More, Mark.
No.
From Kozan,
Sokuzan.
she asks, if we are stuck in the middle of a gossip fest, perhaps
Yes.
at work,
Yes,
is there a way to participate without causing harm?
of course. Remember gravity. Look at the clothes that people are wearing. Look at the color of their clothes. Look at their body language. Smile. Be with them. Hang out. Shuck and jive. That doesn't mean talking. And if they're gossiping, don't criticize. Don't say, oh, we shouldn't gossip. People aren't going to understand that. But just don't participate. This happens here all the time. The people who are temple residents here, I never hear gossip from people who live here. And I'm listening to everybody all the time. I just don't hear it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I don't hear it. More from Kozan?
Not yet.
Anyone else? Oh, I forgot. Shoka does gossip. He doesn't gossip. He's not that creative. That's so funny. My face is getting red right with this. Yeah, it's not a compliment. It's not a criticism, I should say. It's not a criticism. Other questions, especially from people who I've not met before, or anyone else for that matter. Question.
It seems like meditation is getting more difficult
Yeah,
the longer I go.
yeah. What's your question?
Why is that?
Well, it's just like anytime you start practicing something, you start to get into, if you're really motivated, then you get into it and it becomes difficult. Just like learning to play the piano or something like that. You get into aspects of it that are challenging. And meditation practice is like climbing a mountain. And everyone has their own. Some people's path goes this way, and then it looks like a switchback, and then it goes back this way. And then some people actually goes back down, and goes down to a couple of picnic tables, sit down there, smoke a few cigarettes, and go back up again. Don't smoke cigarettes. In other words, we tend to take a break from it, but it's not wrong. There's nothing to correct in your particular path, your path, or anyone else's path. As far as meditation is concerned, will be your path. It'll be unique to you, and no one can tell you. Even someone who's functions as I do as a teacher, even I won't really tell you what to do. You'll have to ask, and then I have to see if I have your permission, and then I'm very happy to tell you what to do. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Question from Gyokudo in Minneapolis.
Yokudo.
She asks, how much do I say to non-meditators when asked about my practice?
Nothing. But we don't want to be impolite. What are they? I mean, you meet them where they're at. If they say, so how's your meditation going? Pretty good. Or in Mark's case, pretty bad. Or, Mark could actually say, if someone said that, ask him, he says, well, it's just more difficult than I thought it would be. And then they might say, what do you mean by that? So, well, I don't know, it's just difficult. Hard to explain. It's like trying to explain something that is very personal to each person, or very, very subjective. It's like trying to explain how something tastes to someone that's not, you can't explain taste. You can't describe, has everybody in here tasted a guava? Is there anybody in here that's not tasted a guava fruit? Guava. Want me to tell you how it tastes? I don't know, you're just gonna have to eat one. They have them in Florida. And they also have them at Horrocks, I think. So after we're done here, you can run out there. They're very good with a lot of salt on them. Boy, my mouth is watering already. But trying to tell somebody about your own personal subjectivity, even if it's something simple like the difficulty you're having, because I've done a bunch of this, I know what you're talking about. So therefore, I'm in a position to, even though you can't really describe it to me, I have an idea of what you're dealing with. I'm just saying, just keep going. Keep going. It's like walking down a path with no scenery. You don't know. It's just getting harder because there's no meditation path doesn't have a lot of rewards. Yes.
Is this where the discipline comes in when it becomes hard?
Yeah, it's discipline all the time. Discipline just means sit down and hold still, which is hard to do. If you sit down and do nothing, the downside of that is that it's very uncomfortable. The upside of that is the degree to which you are getting somewhere is usually the degree to which it is uncomfortable. If you're holding very still and it's very, very difficult or abrasive to you, then you're probably looking right at what you personally need to work with. So in that sense, you're already doing the work of it. Whereas some people need to practice for sometimes several months of having really easy meditation, really enjoying the meditation, really thinking it's so valuable, so helpful, so wonderful, so peaceful, so serene. Maybe even sitting for an hour a day or something like that. Maybe they haven't hit the wall yet. But eventually in meditation, you will hit a wall that is set up by your hope and fear and by your ego. And you'll go, boom, whoa, wait a minute. This is harder than I thought. And then it starts to get more difficult. And that's when it seems to be necessary to have, that's why we have a Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. You have the teaching person, what's being taught. And you have the group of people that get together and try to understand that material and help each other and support each other. One of the most overlooked, or I guess underrated aspects of Buddhist practice is the three nobles, especially the Sangha. Very important to work with a community so that you can appreciate how different we each one of us are in our way of working with the negativities. In working, someone struggling with opinions, trying to understand what opinions are. It's difficult to do that. It takes time. More.
Another question from Steve in Cleveland. Do we ask people if they need any help?
I think as a recommendation, I would think you could a little bit, but I would say if it's somebody you already know, then probably not. They would probably ask you to help them. But Probably not. Probably it's better to hold your seat and just observe what's going on. On the other hand, you know, if somebody's obviously on the side of the road with a cardboard sign saying hungry, you know, you may or may not. That's, if you go past them, it's not wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. It's like you're not obligated to help that person, but you certainly wouldn't be interfering with them to give them a few bucks if you had some money. They're actually taking the time out of their life to sit out there and be embarrassed having to beg. Especially in this culture, begging is, and other cultures, begging is not so bad. In this culture, it's frowned upon.
Seems to be an awful lot of evilness implied in begging in this culture.
A lot of what?
It seems to be looked upon as somehow evil in this culture to beg. It's just a misstatement.
Yeah. Children.
You were describing the difficulty in meditation being abrasive. And that might need to be just what we need to be looking at if we're having that kind of abrasiveness in our meditation.
Yes.
And seems to kind of fall short of what the difficulty, describing it as being what we need to see.
What's your question?
How can it be what we need to see when we don't even know what we're seeing?
Wait it out. It's called patience. It's not even waiting. It's just observing. It's just you're there. Time's going by, but if you're really investigating what is there, you're looking at the texture of the feelings. On the surface of the feeling is a story about the feeling, why it's there. Usually ends up blaming you, blaming someone else. And energy goes to blaming you. It's right or wrong is beside the point. It's just a waste of energy. Blaming someone else, even if you're right, even if they actually did, steal your goat. You got goats?
If I did, I'd be pretty upset if somebody stole it.
Yeah, they got your goat. So, work with it where it's at. And where it is, what you seem to be talking about is some kind of feeling or emotion or something that's coming up that you've been looking at it, doesn't seem to budge. Or would you describe it differently?
I guess I'm not really asking particularly about something that's coming up. I'm
Okay.
kind of asking about seeing if something is coming up.
Is that the question?
I think so.
I don't get it.
How do you know something is coming up?
So when you meditate a lot, so when you sit down and look at the wall, there you are, however you're doing this, you're sitting there looking, and you see things arise. You see thoughts arise, feelings, memories, replays of conversations, emotions, things are arising. Those things are coming up. Don't accept them, don't reject them, don't look away.
So everything is coming up.
Kind of looks that way. And when we say don't accept them, in other words, don't add more stories on about how this should be this way. Don't reject them. Add more stories on about how this shouldn't be true. I shouldn't be feeling this, or this is wrong. And don't look away from it or distract yourself into some kind of a daydream about, some kind of heaven realm or some kind of fancy world that you can be in while you're meditating. Just look at the wall. Sit down, look at the wall. Watch how the mind keeps cranking up stuff. Eventually, the awareness itself starts to become, just a way of talking about it, more powerful than the thought process. I often say, and if you have questions about it, please ask, because it's not a real easy thing to grasp. All thoughts are lies. Every thought you have is incorrect. Is that Ruby?
Yeah.
Come on in, Ruby. Bring your monkey. You have your monkey? No. So, yes, Mike.
So it sounds like you got discipline, patience. Now, are you talking about boredom now?
Well, could be. Boredom. Boredom is the downside of boredom is it's boring. The upside of boredom is if you're experiencing boredom, that is a sign that your intelligence is highly active and you're actually looking at something. But if you continue to allow boredom to be there and don't do anything about it, then boredom starts to turn into insight, because you're looking at something past the entertainment stage. You're looking at something so deeply that you no longer have to get some kind of feedback from it to make it entertaining for you. Someone doing mantras might, if they haven't done very many, might do, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om, the jewel in the lotus, Om, which is a mantra of Chenrezig or Avalokiteshvara. If you're only doing, 100, a couple hundred, then it's still kind of an entertaining, kind of feels good to do that. But do 100,000 of them. Do 500 to 1,000 a day. And see how much fun that is. What that does is that if you decide to do that kind of training, that actually starts to synchronize body, speech, and mind. Body, because you're sitting there. Speech, because you're saying the mantra. And mind, because images are right, whatever the visualization is in the mind. So not all that entertaining. Boring. Yes.
Casey has a question. What's up? That's Sokuzan's dog.
She doesn't know how to talk. I know she's smart. I'm going to take a picture of her. Steve down in Cleveland. He has a picture on, I don't know if it's Facebook page, Steve, I don't know where he got this, but he's got a monk. I don't know if it's Steve or not, but I don't think Steve's a monk, but a monk is praying like this, and next to him is a dog. It made me think of Casey. I thought we could choreograph that, and we could get a picture of Casey sitting up, because Casey will sit up if you say, stick him up, that's right. Further questions, it's 9 o'clock, but I'm happy to take anybody, especially someone who has not asked a question. Step out there and ask. I mean, if I can sit up here and do this, you can at least ask me a question. You have a question, Ruby? Show these adults how to ask a question. Ruby's 8. Going on 9, sorry. No further questions? Okay, thank you. We're going to do dedication of merit.
The dedication of merit is found in the back of your red chant books. We also have donation boxes in the hallway, and would greatly appreciate any help you can give us financially.
Please come back on Sunday at 10 o'clock if you're not busy.
Monday and Tuesday.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho San Shi Shiru Shison Musa Moko Sa Moko Jaboroni. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita,